Kids should not have technology. Maybe I'll get a lot of flack from neglectful parents. That's right. If you let your kid have technology unsupervised and you use that as a mechanism of behavior, using that to discipline your child essentially, or when they get too rowdy, then yes, I would say that you are indeed a neglectful parent. Sorry if that is, actually, I'm not sorry if that is offensive, because that is the modern day that we live in, basically, where people, parents, are not active with their kids anymore. And the world, the whole landscape is very, very different. So my personal belief is that kids really should not have technology the way that it is now, because back when I was much younger, we didn't have those sort of things. It wasn't as easily accessible. But now it is very, very easy to access all forms of technology and the internet and everything that is on it. So let's talk about what some of the problems are with this and why you really shouldn't allow your child to have any sort of technology. So, as I said, kind of start this off with, it does ultimately come down to a parent being very neglectful with their kid. They don't know how to discipline. They don't know how to properly raise the child. So they use something else, an external tool, in order to parent the child. So they may, if the child gets rowdy, if the child gets upset, they could just pass over the phone or the tablet to them, and then that'll be their form of education. It'll make them be quiet. They will be focused on whatever it is that is on the phone or tablet, whether it be videos or, any sort of other thing. That's right, we got to look here at this child here. He has a wide amount of resources available to him on the internet. He is just looking anything possible, but he's too young to really comprehend a lot of concepts he could discover online. And that's a major problem, because without context, children are going to absorb information, and it could be very wrong information. It could be information that perhaps you don't necessarily want them to have access to. And because it's unsupervised from the parents are not supervised and the parents are not monitoring, they end up absorbing a lot of negative information or things that they really shouldn't at their age. So take, for example, if you just decide, I'm just going to put on some videos for my child to watch, and it just keeps going video to video. You're not really paying attention. And then because of how the recommendations are, because of how things are, you may end up getting recommended a lot of content that really isn't suitable for children. So that right there is also a major problem. They're exposed to content that is not suitable for them. They're watching it, and because they don't have the context for it, there's a lot of things that they will absorb into their mind. Because you have to remember this. Children are basically like sponges. They will absorb anything in their surroundings. That is how basically they are up until a certain age. And if you're giving them information that is not helpful for them, they will absorb that. They will absorb anything that you say from their environment, anything that they're watching, all that sort of stuff. But there's a lot of other problems when it comes to the way that technology is ruining not just kids' lives, but also a lot of our lives as well. Certainly there are plenty of benefits, but we're going to talk about a lot of the drawbacks here. So kids used to be, back in the day before all the technology, used to be out and about, having fun with family and friends, going out of the house, doing things outside. But now, the unfortunate thing is, if we take a look here, look at this kid here. He is upset. There we go. I can't position myself anyway. There we go. He's upset that his tablet is being taken from him. It's being stolen by his parents, essentially, because that is basically the only entertainment that he has now. He doesn't have any friends anymore. he has barely any friends. All of the other friends may be, also inside playing with their devices. They're always kept inside. They're not as active. And that also contributes to a lot of physical health problems as well that kids can develop. So physical health problems, mental health problems, and they're not developing the social skills necessary. So if I just look back, many, many years ago, before all this technology, you basically were able to have kids going outside, having activities, doing things together, and learning social skills. That is how you're going to learn social skills. If you do not engage with other people, how do you expect to become better at communicating? There's a decent amount of people who are adults now who have issues with communication, issues with going out there and talking with new people. Even I have struggled, absolutely. I still am not someone who really likes to go out and communicate with other people, but I really am not scared or shy about it anymore as I used to be. Okay? But we have to think about, well, where does a lot of that come from? Where does that stem from? Well, I was raised in a time that there wasn't as much technology as there is now, but certainly there was. But kids these days, that's basically all that they know is this tablet here, this phone. And when you take that away, that you're basically taking away their only form of entertainment or way that they feel fulfilled with their own life. And as a result, they're not actively communicating with their fellow friends, not actively going out and making new friends and talking. That is really the foundation of a lot of these problems that come into play. And if a kid is not active, they will perhaps gain a lot of weight. They will have a lot of physical health problems as well. That's not how kids should be. Kids should be running all over the place, going all over. They should not be sitting here begging for the tablet back. So let's switch back to this one. I like this one as well because, even we have like an AI bot kind of like in the center there, and that's what we're going to dive into for our second topic here. In the next segment, we're going to talk about the AI bots and everything, because we're not going to dive into that just yet. But when a kid is just actively online here, it's like what makes you think then they're not communicating with other people online? That can be very dangerous for them. People who are adults even communicating with these kids who are just taking advantage of them, or a lot of other very sinister or really negative things. So we have to have proper control over the technology that we give the kids, and ideally just eliminate it entirely. Eliminate any sort of access to primarily the internet. So that is the primary foundation here, and you should never use it as a form of education for your kid or as a way of parenting for behavior or anything along those lines, because that, in my personal opinion, is a neglectful and bad parent. So if you're like that, so sorry, I'm not sorry actually, you are a neglectful bad parent. You need to learn how to discipline the kid properly. Now let's take a look back with my own personal life and things that have gone when I was much younger in technology and everything. So, there was not this huge, vast, easy access to the internet when I was a kid. It was pretty much like when I was maybe, I don't remember even how old I was. Like, you just had dial-up internet, you had to connect to the telephone line. It was very inconvenient. It was not all that helpful. But the primary thing that I had when I was a kid was video games. So I had video games. That would be my source of technology and entertainment. And that's also another very, very big difference from when I was younger to how things are now. Because back then, games were not connected to the internet. There was no way. Now you have all these games that are connected to the internet. And they're very competitive in nature, where it can lead kids into very negative spaces there. So if a kid is playing some sort of online game, and people have the headsets on and they're communicating. They could be saying some horrible, disgusting things. There could be all sorts of communication that is very inappropriate for the child to really comprehend. And mind you, back when I was younger, there was no online games. There really weren't. These were all games that were offline. So that right there is a huge difference. But also, the other difference is that a lot of games back when I was younger, at least a fair amount of them, at least the fair amount of ones that I ended up liking, were ones that were not necessarily educational in nature, but they made you think a bit more. They got your brain moving and operating in ways that today's games really do not. So I felt as though there were quite a few games that really made me start thinking very differently than how I was. So that was basically the type of technology that I was exposed to when I was much younger. Some of these video games that some of them could have been, more in depth and made me think a bit deeply. But the problem is, that's still really not going out and communicating and having friends and all that sort of stuff. Now, I did have quite, not too many, but I had a few friends way back in the day, and even we would play some video games and everything. So that was a common ground there. But if we just take a look at how someone my age, if they have a child, how different things are from when we grew up. So it is such a very, very different landscape now as opposed to 30 years ago. So that's something to take into consideration and something to be mindful of when it comes to having a child in this technology age that we live in, where everything is easily accessible, including a lot of this AI stuff now, which we're going to talk about in the next segment, because that is something that it's very, very dangerous. It's very, very dangerous, I must say. Not just for our kids, but just humanity as a whole. So we will talk about that in our next segment.